I'm starting off today looking at two physical representations for fractions. So in front of us I have a grid that actually has 9 squares, and so on the left I've highlighted 1/9, and on the right I've highlighted 3/9 of the entire picture. When you're adding fractions with the same denominator, it's really not that different from adding any other number whatsoever. Just like you learned in, kindergarten maybe, where you had to add things like 1 and 2. You put apples next to each other and you say, well, how many total apples are there? There are 3. So if I want to do something like add 1/9 and 3/9, I can look at this and say, well, since they're all ninths, I can have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 total ninths. I can count them up. And this is actually a picture of that. If I just put them together, I have 4 total ninths. So 1/9 plus 3/9 is 4/9. This is going to work no matter what, as long as we have the same denominator, all because they're the same size pieces. And here's another picture of it. All you can see is literally I counted things up. And again, why does it work so nicely? Same denominator. This is going to be the big differentiator between what I talk about in this video and what I talk about in the next video. When you have the same denominator, you're talking about the same size pieces. It makes sense to just count them and add like normal. When you don't, then that's a whole different thing that we have to talk about. And this works for addition or subtraction. So let's look at 1/4 plus 3/4. Now you may already have a feeling of what the answer is here, but I'm going to look at a picture. So I made a picture for 1/4. So I cut up something into 4 pieces. I said, okay, I'm highlighting one piece. So that's 1/4. And then I said, okay, we're going to add 3/4. Okay, so I highlighted 3 of these. Put them together, and I've highlighted the entire thing. I have 4/4, which is 1. And think about it, if I just count up the total number of fourths I have highlighted, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 fourths. If you really look at what we're doing here, we're actually adding up the top, adding the numerators, and that is the general rule. So mathematically, if I have the same denominator, and as usual, that denominator can't be 0, whether I add or subtract, that's what that symbol means, plus or minus, add or subtract, all I have to worry about is the numerators, because I'm looking at the same size pieces, so it's no different than, like I said, when you're adding up just numbers when you first learn how to add numbers. So I add or subtract the numerators, leave the denominator alone. It wouldn't make sense to add the two denominators because you're trying to count how many pieces total you have when you add, or what happens when you subtract. You're trying to see how many pieces are left. So it works just that way. You leave the denominator alone. So again, that's a plus or minus symbol if you've never seen it before. Really, there's not much else to this. So I want to look at a couple of examples. It doesn't matter whether you have an improper fraction like 8/5, a negative fraction like -2/3. It may get harder to use a picture to show how it works, but it would still make sense. For example, let's look at this first one up here. I have 8/5 minus 2/5. Same denominator, so the denominator is going to stay 5, and all I do is say 8 minus 2 is 6. So I have 6/5. The next example, I have -2/3 plus 1/3. Well, -2 plus 1 would be -1. So I'm left with -1/3. Denominator stays the same. Okay, the very last one, 7/12 plus 3/12. Well, 7 plus 3 is 10. Denominator stays the same, so I have 10/12. Now, just like with anything, and this is going to be a theme in pretty much all the math you ever do, if you can simplify it, go ahead and simplify it. 10/12 can be simplified. You may remember from last time, if the number's even, it can be divided by 2. Both of these are divisible by 2, meaning they have a factor of 2. If I take that factor out, I'm left with 5/6. So 7/12 plus 3/12 is 10/12 if I use the general idea from the picture, but then that can simplify down to 5/6. So again, all you have to remember, if they have the same denominator, is just worry about the numerator. Add or subtract it, and that's it. That'll give you your answer. So again, the next video we'll talk about what are we going to do when they have different denominators.